Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-Wen has said Taipei will boost military exchanges with the United States at a time when tensions with Beijing remain high. The cooperation with the United States has picked up pace, especially since the start of the Ukraine war, and renewed concerns over the threat of an invasion from China.
Always a well-traveled route, traffic between Washington, D.C. and Taipei has been especially heavy in recent months. Last week, the latest group of US lawmakers visited the island, sparking fury in Beijing. China, which claims Taiwan as part of its territory and has vowed to seize it one day, opposes any official exchanges with the democracy. Last year, Nancy Pelosi, then Speaker of the US House of Representatives, chose to visit Taiwan. Her successor, Kevin McCarthy, is also reportedly planning a similar trip. Washington diplomatically recognizes Beijing over Taipei, but is the self-governing island's most important international benefactor and supports Taiwan's right to decide its own future. Support that's becoming more vocal.
If there were a crisis in Taiwan as a result of China's aggression in some fashion, that would have, I think, disastrous consequences for the world economy and for countries around the world. And that's a message, too, that Beijing is hearing increasingly.
That support also increasingly means military backing. Up to 500 Taiwanese troops are heading to the US for training, while the Wall Street Journal reports that the Pentagon will deploy up to 200 American trainers to the island in the coming months.
Taiwan and the United States continue to bolster military exchanges and will cooperate even more actively to confront global challenges such as authoritarian expansionism and climate change.
The situation has intensified again since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The US believes China is gearing up to offer military support to Russia and suggests Beijing is emboldened by the Russian invasion to step up its efforts to seize Taiwan militarily. Blinken cancelled a high-stakes Beijing trip aimed at easing US-China relations after an apparent Chinese spy balloon sailed across American skies. The channels between the US and Taiwan may be busy, but the communication lines with Beijing are in a sorry state.
All right, let's get more context on this from William Yang in DW's Taipei Bureau. William, let's first talk about reports that Taiwan will send around 500 troops to the US for training later this year. Why so many?
I think this is the expansion and deepening of the military exchanges that we have seen over the last few years. And the Taiwanese government specifically said that sending the battalion level of the Taiwan military to U.S. for the training is not only just to familiar themselves with the tactics, but at the same time, they are going to have deepened knowledge about actually how to operate on the battlefield, and also at the same time learn from the experiences of the Americans in getting assistance of actually accumulating a lot more combat-ready strategies that they can deploy and use in the case of a potential conflict.
And speaking of conflicts, the Ukraine conflict, the Ukraine war has been closely followed in Taipei as an example of potentially how to stand up to a bigger and more powerful adversary. Has it radically altered and impacted Taiwan's plans to defend itself against a possible Chinese invasion?
Yes, exactly. At the end of last year, the Taiwanese government revealed a very comprehensive reform of Taiwan's military service, not only reversing the 4-month compulsory military service back to 1 year, but at the same time enhancing the money and salaries that both the compulsory military service personnel will earn, but also for professional military members, they will even enhance the monthly salary. And also there are more detailed plans of strengthening and also beefing up the training content, because in the past, a lot of the criticism has been the fact that the training itself and the content of the training has been focusing way too much on very limited and non-combat related content and materials. But right now, the new program and the new strategy is focusing more on getting more soldiers ready for combat situations.
Speaking of this training content, I mean, there are also announcements that the US will increase the number of troops it has on the island to train Taiwanese forces. And through all of this, I'm wondering if Taiwan is clear on where the US stands when it comes to actually defending Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
I think Taiwan is getting a very clear signal from Washington because during the latest report from Wall Street Journal, we learned that the U.S. is really trying to ensure that Taiwan's soldier and Taiwan's military has the capability to really get used to all the new programs and platforms and the weapons that Taiwan has purchased from the United States. And that's the main purpose of increasing the number of U.S. troops based in Taiwan. They are going to be here to train and also get the Taiwanese military up to speed with all these new military weapons. And at the same time, I think this is just showing the fact that the U.S. wants Taiwan to have the capability to really function and operate these new military weapons. And at the same time, it is in line with the urge of Taiwan adopting more asymmetrical capability and also turning Taiwan into a porcupine to be able to strengthen its defense and at the same time deter China from even taking the first step of invasion.
And what about China's view, William? Beijing clearly isn't pleased with all this military cooperation with the United States, but is that a risk that Taipei is prepared to take?
I think the Taiwanese government has been repeatedly making this signal that Taiwan is not going to shy away from a conflict when the invasion is being initiated by Beijing. But at the same time, Taiwan is not adopting and beefing up its military budget and also transforming its military training to try to invite a war. Rather, it is just a positive and necessary step for Taiwan to strengthen its defense capabilities after years of not making much progress in terms of Taiwan's defense capability. And this is a step in the right direction from not only just Taiwan, but also from regional allies like Japan and the United States perspective. And they are trying to engage Taiwan more in terms of defense dialogues and at the same time, the bilateral exchanges at the military level.
Okay, William, just stay on the line. Let's hear what the opposition in Taiwan thinks about these growing US-Taiwan exchanges. The following soundbites are from the opposition KMT.
We welcome U.S. military assistance and training to help Taiwan. But we don't need to make any big deal out of this news. Look at the numbers. Boosting the number of U.S. military personnel 3 or 4 times in Taiwan, from the original 40 to more than 100. Do you really think it would make a big difference? I don't think so.
Reports of the US sending more troops and asking ours to go to the US for training shows that the situation across the Taiwan Straits is indeed perilous. If it wasn't, the US would not be doing this. Why are we in danger? Because we've become a pawn in the conflict between China and the US.
William, you heard those soundbites there. Are these sentiments the opposition's alone, or do they represent a considerable view in Taiwan's population?
I think these views represent a certain faction inside the Taiwanese society, even though we are seeing the number in polls suggesting that more and more people are willing to fight for Taiwan if a conflict broke out with China. But at the same time, there are people who I've been talking to in recent months and weeks saying that at the end of the day, maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait is still their top priority. And they are concerned about the moves and deepened ties between the U.S. and Taiwan on the military front, and also the what these kind of gestures and news are going to send signals to Beijing and how Beijing is possibly going to respond. So clearly, these are not only restricted to the opposition politicians that we heard, but at the same time, they are being shared among Taiwanese population as well.
There are also reports that U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is planning to visit Taiwan. You talked about sending signals to Beijing. Is Taipei open to such a visit?
I think the context of this visit compared to last August's visit by the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is very different. We are in a lead up to the presidential election in the January of 2024. So a potential McCarthy visit is going to have a huge impact on domestic politics this year, and how that's going to affect the political landscape here is unpredicted right now. But at the same time, we know that for the ruling party, it could play into their advantage. And for the opposition party, that is going to add a lot more uncertainty in terms of how people are going to feel about the threats coming from China. So I think such a visit is going to have a huge impact on the election that we're going to see in January 2024.
Overall, William, will growing US-Taiwan military exchanges keep Taiwan more safe or less so?
I think if we focus on the content and the actual, practical side of the exchange and the purpose of these trainings, it is going to help Taiwan overall to enhance its defense capabilities and also help to push Taiwan to really overall spend more of its budget and resources on the necessary aspects of its military and also national defense. But if we start to let the discussion about the political implication of these trainings and exchanges to dominate the overall dialogue and also the focus of this training, then perhaps it's going to start to create some misleading and also misconception inside the civil society. So I think it's very important for the government to try to focus the purpose of the training on what is actually going to help Taiwan.
William Yang in Taipei, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for that context.
Thank you.